All three of his books have turned into movies. Best Picture, Moneyball, Big Short, The Blind Side. Blind Side, Sandra Bullock won Best Actress. He is in the running for the, to me, my favorite author in America, Michael Lewis, New York Times bestselling author. And what's fascinating is you've got a Malcolm Gladwell feel to you. You introduce me to things, stories as they develop, I don't know about. And I said that to you as you have now created a new podcast. And you said...
You know, Malcolm, in this case, is one of the editors on the podcast. I mean, the podcast is done for a new podcast company called Pushkin Industries, which was started by Malcolm and another friend of ours named Jacob Weisberg. So he's in the middle of this podcast.
Well, two of my favorite guys, so there's a lot of intellectual bandwidth there. So you have the new podcast called Against the Rules. So let's explain what it is to the audience.
Sure. So it's 7 episodes. It's not just me talking to people. It's their stories. And the theme is referees in American life. Only one is with the second one just dropped today, but the first one was actually about basketball referees. And there's an argument running through it, and the argument is basically any place where there's a human being in the position of being a referee, he's under attack or on the run in different ways. And the NBA refs are like a wonderful example of
Why?
this. Couple reasons. One is Adam Silver, since he's come on board, has done, gone to incredible lengths to improve the refereeing, the replay center that they can go to fix calls that are wrong, broadening the pool of people they draw from to hire the refs. New training. I mean, they brought in a general from the Air Force to run the training program of the refs. They make the refs aware of their errors in the way they didn't used to. I mean,
there's a transparency.
Publishing the mistakes. There's a push towards improving the accuracy of the calls, and the effect seems to be just to anger everybody. I mean, the relationship between the refs and the players
is at an all-time low.
So
the pits.
It's a really interesting situation, and there are like two answers to this. The simple answer would be, oh, the refs are just worse. I think once you dig into it, as we do in the podcast, there's no way you come to that conclusion. The refs are actually better than they were. What's happened is a couple things. One is we notice their mistakes more.
Technology
is a big thing, and it's on the jumbotron. And the second thing is when you improve the accuracy of the calls, who do you irritate? You irritate the home team because they used to get more of the calls. The home court advantage, largely driven by refs' calls, has shrunk, and so the people in the arena are not as happy as they used to be. But the stars used to get the calls in a better way, more than they used to. And that's, if you look at the friction between the players and the refs, a lot of it's coming from the stars. It's Durant and Curry and Harden and getting thrown out of games and technicals, and they're the ones who are in the faces of the refs.
Can I throw out another element?
Sure.
Is that with the new CBA several years ago, even marginal players now are paid more than NFL stars, that money makes us do two things. We build bigger walls around our castle. We don't relate to regular people. We have somebody get our groceries. We fly private. We don't fly commercial. The vagaries of a normal society are no longer our problems. They're the people working for us. And money makes us think we're smarter than we are. And players are harder to officiate because they're richer. And when you're rich, you don't suffer the commonalities of American life. How can you not give me this call? This is not to blame NBA players. I see NFL quarterbacks complain more. I see baseball players treat umpires like crap. This
is a story of the financial crisis. There's Wall Street people.
Tell me this.
Say, no, it's the same thing. It's like, who are you to referee me? Right? Who are you to referee me? That is where we go in the podcast. We go to psychologists who study the effects of privilege, and privileged people behave badly. They don't. When a privileged person comes up against a not privileged person in some kind of conflict, the privileged person does not want or expect someone to fairly referee the situation. They expect to steamroll over the not privileged person. There's a great study done by a friend of mine at Cal, who's a psychologist. He looked at four-way stop signs and the way cars behaved at four-way stop signs.
Those are a nightmare for consumers, by the way. I've been in one of those. They're a nightmare.
And he classified the cars by how fancy the cars were. Like a new BMW Mercedes was a 1, and the AMC Pacer was a 5. And when they come to this four-way stop sign, who behaves badly? Who runs it? Who abuses the situation?
The nice car.
The nice car. And LeBron is the nice car. So that, I think that is exactly right. That the problem we have with refereeing in the society is a byproduct of the inequality in the society. And people in a position of privilege just don't like being refereed. And the referees are feeling the brunt of this.
What about the NBA Replay Center, which is in Secaucus, New Jersey? You spent time at. Was that like a...
It was a really cool place. I mean, it's built... Think about this. They spent $15 million to build that place, and they reverse 2 calls a game. And
Wow.
what it is it's a really peculiar place in that it's just a room with 110 giant screens in it. And the screens are... It's connected by direct fiber optic link. Like they ran fiber optic links from there to each of the NBA arenas. And all that's on the screens is the angles of the court. I mean, you can't watch, Nathan For You or Homeland on these screens. All you can see is the angles of the court. There's no graphics. There's no nothing. It's just to isolate the game in a way the human eye even can, to get the thing more accurate. And the thing that was, Joe Borgia, who runs the place, said to me something that stuck in my head. He said, all we see in the air is whatever happens to be on that court. And so sometimes I'll watch the halftime shows or whatever's going on, and sometimes they have a magician. And when the magician is out performing at halftime, we can slow it down and see how he does his tricks. and that's sort of what they're doing with the players, right? Flopping. It's an optical illusion, and they're trying to get to something they'll never get to, perfect accuracy, but in the name of fairness. And but the interesting thing is not that they're doing this. Of course, they're doing this if you can do this, I guess. But that it's provoking the anger that it's provoking.
Michael Lewis, New York Times best-selling author, journalist, author of Moneyball, The Blind Side, The Big Short, 3 of his books that became movies, nominated for Academy Awards. Let me push back on years ago, and this may in some jurisdictions still remain, Michael, that law enforcement, instead of cutting back on the number of officers, you'd have cameras that would give people tickets.
Yep.
And the public refused to pay them. They thought it was unfair.
Right.
This is a big problem. Yeah. So, no. You're not going to catch me from a camera. It's got to be a person.
Right.
And this is just kind of a cultural phenomenon that happened. In officiating, there is a gap. I don't think it's totally fair to have a 9-minute delay to get the call right.
Yeah, but they don't really usually. They're not 9 minutes.
No, delays. But last night, for instance, replay hurts momentum. If I dunk on you and the crowd's roaring, and then we go to a 6-minute break or a 3-minute break.
Right. That's an entertainment question, not a fairness question.
Okay, that's good.
Right?
Okay, so
so you could argue that we don't need as much fairness as we're trying to get, and
I think that's what I'm arguing.
In the name of entertainment, fine, but that's not the argument. That's not why people are getting outraged. They're irritated by slowing the game down. They get outraged by perceived injustice. And the idea that getting the call right is somehow less just than getting the call wrong, that's hard to argue, I think.
No, it is.
So the ball goes off the finger of the Texas Tech player. It really did go off the finger of the Texas Tech player.
Yes.
Right? That if you feel badly about that call got made, it's probably because you're for Texas Tech. So the beginning of this whole series for me, it goes back to, I used to run, both my daughters are softball players, and I used to run their competitive travel ball lives. And when I first got into it, I was just amazed how when you went to even a 9-year-old girls softball game, at the end of the game, half the crowd was furious with the umpire, and the other half of the crowd didn't have any feeling whatsoever about the umpire. They weren't feeling good about the umpire. It was like nobody ever says, "Oh, I won because of the umpire."
It's indifferent or anger.
It's indifferent or anger. So it's all negative. I mean,
right.
And that role, it's an interesting role because the game doesn't happen without a good ref, and I could imagine a world in which at the end of the game we all stand up and cheer the ref. Because because it was a hard job and he's on the receiving end of all this stuff. And how brave of you to play that role.
I think it's going to get worse due to legalized sports gambling. I'm noticing it on sports radio shows that hosts are complaining about conspiracy theories. And I'm like, oh no. How is this going to extrapolate that over 10 years?
No, I think your point about gambling is really well taken because people are going to have personal grievances against refs and umpires that they think that ref cost me,
cable bill.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I think I think you're exactly right. You talk to the refs of the NBA. I mean, the level of physical protection they require has just increased. So they have police escorts in and out of the building. They're death threats sometimes. They get escorts back to the hotel room. It's crazy. I mean, this is crazy stuff, but it isn't. I guess my bigger point is, and the podcast is trying to make the bigger point, what is happening in the NBA is just a microcosm of what's happening in the larger society. Everywhere you turn, you find refs who, if they're honest refs, trying to do their best, they're under the same sort of assault as NBA refs. Judges, I mean, judges feel this way. Judges are physical threats towards judges are on the rise. President of the United States coming out and attacking judges as the way you would attack an NBA ref, as if they're acting in bad faith. And that's the other strange thing, is that people who get so angry, the assumption is it's personal. You're doing it to me. It's not just a mistake. There's like malice involved. And I mean, do you get that when you played sports as a kid?
No, but I get it as a host. I didn't get it. No, I get what you're saying. The sports game, and I'm pro gambling. I think there are problems on the horizon that you are addressing that are real, that worry me. I'm hearing gambling. There's an addictive quality, obviously. People now can't pay their, I just saw a sports radio host that went to prison based on this, gambling going down that.
It's a little close to home.
Yeah, the abyss. So thank God I don't have that quality. Yeah. Okay, folks, it's called Against the Rules Podcast with Michael Lewis. I adore your work. I think you're brilliant. And you just keep paying credits to everything you do. We all get smarter. I wish you the very best, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, Against the Rules Podcast.